All right, let's jump right in. Today we're tackling what is honestly the make-or-break domain on the Solutions Architect Associate exam, designing resilient architectures. Now, this isn't just about memorizing a bunch of services. It's about a total shift in how you think, a mindset that AWS expects every architect to have. Let's get into it. You know, every single design choice you make as an architect, everything, really boils down to answering this one simple question. And notice I said when things go wrong, not if. The exam is going to hit you with this concept over and over, throwing you scenarios where something breaks, and your job is to pick the architecture that just shrugs it off and keeps on running.
This right here, this quote from Amazon CTO Werner Vogels, isn't just a catchy phrase. It's basically the secret answer key to half the resilience questions on the exam. It is the absolute core philosophy of building on AWS. You don't design to prevent failure. That's impossible. You design to withstand it and recover automatically. Let's see how that works in practice.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the absolute fundamentals. Then we'll dive into the key patterns, like using multiple availability zones and decoupling your components. From there, we'll talk data protection, automated recovery, and then we'll wrap it all up with the exact mindset you need to walk into that exam and just crush these questions.
First up, let's tackle two terms that are absolutely critical, and honestly, pretty easy to mix up: high availability and fault tolerance. You have to know the difference, and the exam will definitely test you on when to use each one.
Let's break this down, because the exam loves to get tricky here. High availability, or HA, just means your app can survive a failure, but your users might notice. Think of it like getting a flat tire and having to drive on the spare. You're still moving, sure, but you're probably going slower. It's reduced capacity. Now, fault tolerance, or FT, that's the next level up. The system handles a failure with absolutely zero impact to the user. It's completely seamless. So for the exam, just lock this in your brain. HA means reduced capacity, and FT means zero downtime. And remember, FT is always going to be more expensive, so you only pick it when a business requirement says there can be absolutely no disruption.
So that's the what. But how do we actually do it? How do we build for HA or FT? Well, it all starts with the single most important building block for resilience on AWS. And this is it, the availability zone. I honestly can't say this enough. Nearly every resilience question on the SAA exam works from the assumption that you are building across multiple availability zones. If you see an answer choice that puts a critical production system in a single AZ, it's almost guaranteed to be the wrong answer.
So why is this such a big deal? Well, you have to understand, an AZ isn't just one data center building. It's one or more, each with its own power, its own networking, its own connectivity, all totally separate. They are physically isolated from each other, which means a fire, a flood, or a power grid failure in one AZ is not going to take down another. So by architecting your application to span at least two AZs, you've immediately built in this incredible layer of failure isolation.
Okay, spreading across AZs is great for handling those big infrastructure failures. But what about when your own code breaks? This is where we need to talk about limiting the blast radius, making sure one little problem doesn't cascade and take down your entire system. The two key patterns here are statelessness and decoupling.
Decoupling is all about breaking your application into smaller, independent pieces that don't directly depend on each other. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine an e-commerce site. You place an order, and that process also has to trigger a confirmation email. In a tightly coupled system, if the email service goes down, the whole order might fail. But if we decouple them with, say, a message queue, the order gets confirmed instantly. The request to send an email just sits safely in that queue, waiting for the email service to come back online. See? A minor issue is contained instead of becoming a huge failure.
And you know, there's a really easy way to achieve this and dramatically reduce your risk. Think of it like a spectrum. On the right, you've got stuff where you manage everything, like EC2 instances. On the left, you have fully managed services like SQS and Lambda. Every time you shift left on this spectrum, you're offloading the hard work of availability and fault tolerance to AWS. Your job gets way simpler, and the exam loves to test if you know when to let a managed service do the heavy lifting for you.
Amazon SQS is the classic example here. It is a fully managed message queue. You don't spin up servers for it, you don't patch it, you don't worry about the queue service itself failing. You just use it. You send and receive messages between your application components, and it creates that crucial buffer that isolates them from one another's problems.
So we've been focused on keeping our applications running, but that's only half the battle, right? What about the data itself? Application availability is one thing, but data durability is a whole other critical problem. So let's shift gears and talk about data protection.
For the exam, you've got to know these 4 main disaster recovery strategies, and, more importantly, their trade-offs. It's a spectrum. On one end, you've got backup and restore. It's cheap, but it's slow to recover. All the way on the other end is multi-site active-active. Instant recovery, but man, is it expensive. And in the middle, you've got pilot light and warm standby. The whole key is matching the right strategy to what the business needs, specifically 2 metrics, RTO and RPO.
And this table right here, this is your cheat sheet for the exam. It lays out the trade-offs you'll be making constantly. RTO, recovery time objective, is how fast you need to be back online. RPO, recovery point objective, is how much data you can afford to lose. And just look at the pattern. As your RTO and RPO get smaller, meaning faster recovery and less data loss, the cost just skyrockets. Your job on an exam question is to look at the RTO/RPO they give you and pick the strategy from this chart that meets it for the lowest possible cost.
Okay, this is where things get really cool. A truly resilient architecture doesn't just survive failure with a bunch of people scrambling to fix it. Nope, it automatically recovers, often without a human ever even knowing there was a problem. This is what we call a self-healing architecture, and it's all about a constant loop of detection and automated action.
Step 1 in any recovery is you have to detect that something's broken. This is the job of Amazon CloudWatch. It's basically the eyes and ears of your entire infrastructure. CloudWatch is constantly collecting metrics and logs, and you set up alarms to go off when something looks wrong, like CPU utilization is too high or your error count spikes. That alarm is the trigger that kicks off the whole automated recovery.
So, CloudWatch sounds the alarm. What's next? Well, you've got to reroute traffic away from the unhealthy part of your system. And for that, we turn to Amazon Route 53. By setting up DNS health checks, Route 53 can just automatically stop sending your users to an instance or even an entire region that it sees is failing. It acts like an automated traffic cop, keeping your users safe from broken endpoints.
And finally, you have to actually fix the problem by automatically replacing the failed component. Amazon EC2 autoscaling is the hero here. It's constantly watching the health of your instances, and if it sees one that's unhealthy, it'll just terminate it and launch a brand new, healthy one to take its place. This whole loop, detect, reroute, and replace, that is the heart of a self-healing architecture.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground. Let's pull all these concepts together into one final actionable strategy for how you should be thinking about these questions when you're sitting in the exam.
Listen, if you remember one thing from this whole explainer, make it this. This is the golden rule. You have to read the question for the specific business requirements, RTO, RPO, cost, whatever they give you. The exam will try to trick you by giving you multiple answers that are technically correct. Your job is not to pick the most resilient option possible. Your job is to pick the most appropriate and cost-effective one. Never, ever pick a crazy expensive active-active solution if the business says they can handle an hour of downtime. That is a classic exam trap.
So to sum it all up, remember that Werner Vogel's quote, and always design for failure. Make multiple AZs your absolute foundation. Decouple your components, ideally with managed services to limit the blast radius of any single failure. Automate that recovery loop to build self-healing systems. And always, always match your DR strategy to the specific RTO and RPO the business needs.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a question. Looking at all the patterns we've talked about today, multi-AZ, decoupling, automated recovery, which one of those do you think would make the biggest positive impact on a system you're working on right now? Seriously, thinking about how to apply this stuff is the absolute best way to make it stick.
And that is our deep dive into designing resilient architectures for the AWS exam. If you found this breakdown valuable, do me a favor and hit that like button, and definitely subscribe for more content to help you ace your certification. Drop your answer to that last question in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one.